Good day and welcome to another edition of the Faith and Real Life podcast. This is a very special Roundtable edition where I am joined not only by the lovely Mrs. Prebel, but also the just as lovely Mrs. Carrie Ann Ford. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Like Millie looks at her like, welcome, you're in the lion's den. Trust me. I've been working with this guy long enough to know that
No doubt.
anything goes down. Anything goes down. But no, it's good to see you. How you been?
Thank you. Well, yep.
What is new in your life? Introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about yourself. And I've known you for a lot of years, so I could do that, but I'd rather you do it.
Right. Well, I'm Carrie Ford, and I'm from the Buffalo area, so I love being here. And I call this the Beehive. I love being in the hive and sharing in ministry and collaborative ministry, and that's really how our relationship started. Was
Right.
Collaborative ministry. You know, I was out there trying to do it all by myself, which I don't love. I have to be honest.
It's a lonely place.
No, it really is. It really is. So, back in the Buffalo area, I'm married. I have an awesome husband and 2 kids. My daughter is not a kid anymore. She's going to be 21 next week, which
Wow.
I know, right? You have a 21-year-old.
I just went there,
what
and
it's like, right?
yeah, I just went there.
Yeah, and my son is a senior, and so that all the things that come with having a senior in high school. So, we're out there trying to do ministry. I'm building a new business as a life balance coach, which has been wonderful.
Yeah.
New challenge, and
Don't we all
it's
want
been
life
great.
balance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was it. I was on a quest for my own balance. And, eventually as I was kind of going through that, I found an opportunity to serve in that way as an extension of my ministry. So it would just really fit all in, and it was really nice. Yeah. And I'm still an essential oil junkie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if you've ever seen any of my morning shows with the essential oils in the background,
my fault.
right there.
I take
Yeah.
full responsibility.
Yeah, and one day I'll use all of them, and then you'll have to buy them because I'll have another addiction. But I'm glad that you're here today. And Millie, we were talking a couple weeks ago about podcast ideas and things like that. And Millie said, let's talk about some of the issues and the prayers that we've heard and the things that are connecting, and maybe just share a little bit more about that thought about what we're talking today when it comes to understanding what is going on and what people are really in need of.
Well, I think, it is called Faith and Real Life, your ministry. So I don't think we do anyone a service to not address the needs that are actually going on in our real life. And it was funny when you were talking about the things that you wanted to talk about or do. It's like we do our podcast. I do my podcast anyways for the oil that, for my wheel.
Yeah, right.
I'm always looking at, if this is something that's happening to me, I wonder if it's going to connect with somebody else.
Or am I
many
going
times-
crazy?
Yeah, that crosses my mind too. But I think a lot of times, we think we're alone in so many of these struggles. And when we just say, hey, I've got this kind of going on, and there's like, you too. So
Right.
that reaching out and that friendship and fellowship, I think is so important. So I just kind of got the idea of sharing, you're out there talking to a lot of people, you connect, I connect. So what's the temperature out there? What are people thinking about, praying about, struggling with? That was kind of my thought.
Well, and some of you might be aware, I know that some of you are watchers or viewers of our YouTube channel as well as our social media posts. And Carrie hosts Coffee and Conversation, or Tea Talk Tuesdays with Carrie, on our Facebook channel, Faith and Real Life, Let Me Be Ministries, at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Millie hosts Wednesday Wisdom with Millie at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we do hit on some of these subjects as things kind of come to us and as we experience them. We talk about these life issues, but I think it's good to go in depth to say, I'm not sharing anything personal about anyone else. I'm not breaking any vow of confidence or any seal, but these are real things that are happening in the world. And so I would love to start off, if I could, because it's my show. But no, I'm just kidding. No, but just as I said that, what came to mind and what came to my heart is something that some of you may connect with as parents. And that's what we're dealing with right now with children preparing for college and children that are in college or even young adult. I know that your daughter's in the Coast Guard, Carrie. And you have a young adult daughter too.
Well,
Millie.
my kids are 29 and 30, so
Right.
31. So
But you may have some advice in this
I've
realm.
been through that those murky waters.
That's why you have Wednesday wisdom.
Yeah, right, right. That's true. I ask questions, Millie gives the answers.
Right.
But no, there's college right now. Obviously, the show's being done during a pandemic, and that is a whole nother beast. We could have a whole show on that. But trying to live up to what the world is telling them they should be, how the institutional education system is run, in my opinion, and trying to satisfy thinking that they should have it all together. Mm-hmm. This is a prayer that a lot of people, I do see this on social media, of just people, where do we turn? Where do we go? How do we deal with this in our kids? Mm-hmm. And so I would throw out this first question as to, what do people do for their children who are trying to navigate life, but the life that we're trying to help them navigate is not necessarily one that the world is pushing, but one that we're trying to help them live. Mm-hmm. And I know in my own life, I try to tell them about God, but when God is very hard to see, what can I help them do to find some motivation? And whether it's through other motivational speakers or some secular things, but most of all, at least for me, it's a continual reminder of how much I love them and that they always have a place in home when the rest of the world is falling apart. So I don't know, what are some of your thoughts, Carrie? Let's start with you on that.
Well, I mean, I do think that it's true, but I also think that these young people are in kind of a unique place right now, because the very thing that drives me crazy, which is that everybody's opinion is, completely valid,
it's
and
gospel.
Everybody's right, and and what that's done is create this culture of nobody standing up for their beliefs. Is what I see. But at the same time, it gives them an ability to stand up for what they believe in, or to say that this is who I am, knowing that they might not be judged as harshly as they would have been when I was trying, as a younger person, to be a missionary amongst my peers and things like that. So I don't know, but I do see that, my daughter really went through a phase where when she got to her new station, she decided she was going to just be quiet, just be a background person, a support person. Well, she's not quiet. She's a go-getter and she's a leader. And, she was like, I'm always so happy. And people would make fun of her for being so happy all the time and loving her life so much.
Right.
She really does love her life. It's beautiful to see. And people would make fun of her for that. It's like they wanted her to be depressed and sad like they were. And so she decided.
He loves company.
You said it right before I could, right?
Yeah.
True.
So she went to her new station deciding she wasn't going to smile and laugh and have joy all the time. And I mean, that lasted like maybe 3 days. And she couldn't,
Good for her.
And then she started to be herself again. And as much as people kind of tease her and make fun of her colleagues and stuff, at the same time, they all want to be a little more like that. And so she may not feel comfortable sharing her faith in her workplace or in her, her everyday life, but she is more comfortable being who she is. And that I'm really proud of. And I think people see that she's different. And what I try to encourage as a parent is for her to have those conversations. Like, when people start asking you questions about what makes you different, where's your joy come from, who are you, like, be willing to then say, this is who I am and this is what I believe.
Well, now, Millie, the world is ever evolving, right? And was this the same experience that your children went through in college? Did they have some of these same things maybe 8-9 years ago? Or is this something that, as social media has burst even more, that it's a problem?
I think there were bits and pieces of it, but it definitely has intensified. I think there's so much comparison. There's so much, well, so-and-so's doing this, and I need to do that, and why can't I have this, and why can't I go there? And, we have to remember it's a transitional time of life,
Right.
And it's funny because there's a joke that, like, your kids get so unruly at, the senior years because they're trying to get you ready for kicking them out.
Yeah.
It's like,
if you hate me enough, you'll be happy I'm gone.
Pharaoh and, the Israelites, like, okay, go. But really, I think, my situation was different. I said my daughter and son are a little bit older, but my daughter went out to California. There's that loss and that growth, and she was determined to do her own thing. and she struggled, and I supported as much as I could. And it got to the point where it was like, okay, this, like, we've given it a shot. It's not working, So I think she was she was pleased that I gave her that opportunity. I mean, to send a 17-year-old off to California by herself.
Yeah, right.
I did have a friend of a
I
friend.
was afraid to send my kids to the store by themselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did have a friend of a friend that kind of took her in and rented a bedroom to her. So I had a little bit of protection. But it was hard. But I just didn't want to say no. I didn't want to say you can't do this, because she had worked really hard saving her money to get out to LA to do some of these acting workshops, paid her own way, worked at Dairy Queen just really, really hard. So I knew I had to, pray and let her go, pray a hedge of protection around her to go out there. And then, I mean, so she could look back and say, at least you let me do it. You didn't prevent me, because then it's always coulda, shoulda, woulda. So I think, you guys have to, wrestle that beast of, am I the one that doesn't allow or does allow, supports, encourages? Are you the reality check? That's not going to work out for you?
Right.
There is such a fine line.
And that's the wisdom that is beautiful that we all share together. So whether you have children that are in college or whether you've been through it, I think there's a couple different aspects that all of us can look at to say, first of all, it is a season of life. It's a time of learning and growth. And anytime there's learning and growth, there's going to be hurt. There's going to be failures. And you want them now. You want them in a safe environment. Mm-hmm. So I think that part of that answer to our prayer is reminding ourselves that if that is one of your prayers and you're struggling through it, to know that love them through it, but let them fall in a safe way. Number two would be, if you've gone through the situation like Millie is, how can you share your own wisdom with your children or with other people and say, hey, how are you doing with this? How are you feeling about your kids being away? Are they doing okay? Mm-hmm. And, help me help you. It's that kind of thing. And to have the real conversations about what we're going through, because depression is the number one disability, as we spoke about. And they're suffering. They are suffering in their own right, but yet we are hopeful that they will grow and they will solve their own problems. Every generation has caused their own issues, and they will come through it one way or the other. But we do have to be focused on God in order to help make sure that we're making those right decisions. So I'm going to throw it back across to the other side, and Millie, just ask you, what is one of the hot issues or something that you're hearing that people are asking for prayers on?
Gosh, there's so much. But one of the things that I think is very relevant, I hear it in a lot of Bible studies and a lot of even our classes, is that, people's children have walked away from the faith or aren't practicing. You hear that a lot.
Yeah.
How do we deal with it? How do we encourage, support, not preach and lecture? So, I mean, I have it kind of both ways. My daughter went, both of them went through all the sacraments, Catholic religion up until they got confirmed, and then they got that golden ticket and said, see ya.
Yeah, right.
But, and I honestly, at that time, I was not a huge faith follower as I, was going into like my maybe mid-30s, 40s.
Your faith has grown and become more important to you. Yeah.
But my daughter has come back. She had my grandson baptized. So I, and it's through prayer. I mean, I just prayer and prayer. And my son-in-law also told my daughter one time, he's like, I just want what your mom has.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
You want people to say that.
So not by not preaching to them, but preaching through my life of being, committed to the church and to my faith. And then my son, he's spiritual but not religious. I don't know what that means. But anyways, I keep saying I'm praying for you. I keep, encouraging him to take things to God. So I think, that's all we can do. And it was interesting because we had that funeral service for my husband's father passed away. And Father Neil did such an amazing job describing the promises and the hope we have in our faith. And I said to him afterwards, I said, what you said was so beautiful. You did such a beautiful job. And he goes, no, well, when you have good material. I said, no, you don't understand. There were people here that needed to hear Jesus today. And they heard him. Well,
and that, you said your son said about the spiritual and not religious. We did the entire podcast on that you can go back and watch. But to easily summarize that up and what I think it means, It means I don't trust the institution of religion, so I'm going to tell you I believe in God and I'm spiritual, but I can't do what you do because those people have made mistakes. And so we need to help them. And never forget, and then Carrie, I'll throw it over to you, but never forget, somebody once told me that even if your kids are away from the church, but you stay faithful, and especially in the Catholic faith, you continue to receive the Eucharist, that the kids are never fully away from the church because you keep bringing it to them every time you see them. So that's a powerful statement and something that we take solace in. But, Carrie, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I agree. And for me, like my son said to me just recently, he's like, I have faith, I believe in God, but I'm not going back to church, And he was confirmed last year, he got his golden ticket. But we were, until the pandemic hit, we were involved in family ministry. So he had to come to church to play the drums, come to church to sing. And so that was like how I kept him. And I got very complacent in that as a parent, because I was like, I do have to fight a little bit that he has to come early for rehearsal, but I didn't have to fight him being at Mass because he likes to play the drums. But it was that he was going for. It wasn't for the Eucharist. It wasn't for, for church in that. He liked the community and he liked the drums. And so when he said that to me, he's like, I'm never going back to that church. But I have faith and I believe in God. Some parents, that would freak them out.
Right.
But for me, and that's something I get a lot from parents, is like, my child wants to go to this other church, wants to go to this other youth group, wants to, what do I do? My child wants to go to that big mega church. And I don't know. I personally, I love Jesus and I love the Eucharist. My children aren't there yet.
Right.
And I want them to love Jesus.
Well, think about it.
So eventually that'll bring them to the Eucharist.
Well, you love the story of Mary and Martha, right? It took, Martha loved Jesus, but she's in the kitchen and she's worshiping Jesus in a different way, and she sees what Mary has. And that makes her as mad as it is that Jesus isn't spending time with her. So I think that there is some mercy for our kids to progress and being open to having those conversations, to not judge right away, to not bark back.
Right.
I mean, it is the number one comment that we hear on the road, that people are at events to figure out how to get their kids to come back to church. So, but we have to be open to have the conversations for them to be honest, to say, tell me what is really the essence of it. And sometimes you may find that they may say, well, Mom or Dad, I've watched you guys pray your whole life, and I've watched the heartache that you've had to go through, and it doesn't do any good. And then we need to explain where, even though we've had human emotions, that we have found a relationship with Christ that has allowed us to.
And
get
the only
through
way
that stuff.
I did get through that was through my love.
Amen.
Of Christ and my faith. Yeah, it's interesting you were saying, about going to different churches. I heard a homily from Father Tom in St. Dominic's in Cleveland, and he said he had one of his friends shared one of his podcasts for the Mass, and it was a Baptist friend, and the Baptist friend actually emailed him and said, Father, I just loved your sermon, and I just think, this Catholic thing's not so bad, and he just said, and so Father Tom talked about the fact that, if your children have gone to another denomination or another, church, they're still going to church.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and that's what we want. We want them to know the love of Christ. And as the Catholic, capital, C,
Right.
small c, Catholic Church, we are ecumenically welcoming.
Right.
We are acceptant of, if you believe in Jesus, you've been baptized. We are, a community of believers that want everybody to get there.
Yeah.
And I think we have to let go of our own ego and pride to
Sure.
say that, well, they're not going to my church and they're not going to the Catholic Church. I mean, if they're going to church,
Right.
And to the point, too, of even looking at myself, I mean, when I was their age, I wasn't going to church that often.
Right.
But my parents gave me the foundation of faith. Thank God they did.
Right.
Because, when you do get to times in life where you have nothing but faith left, you really can return. And I think that's what's difficult with our young people is they don't have enough life experience to say, God got me through that. Yeah, he was there.
Right.
I saw him there. But as we grow and as we realize and can look back and really contemplate, deeply on, where was God in this?
Well,
You'll find his handprint over all of it.
Well, we have to take some responsibility as a church for, have we given enough to our young people and reassurance of what the Catholic faith means? If you're Catholic, do whatever denomination that you belong to, do you know why you believe what you believe, not why we're against what other people believe? If you're not Catholic and you have friends, don't chastise them for going to the Catholic Church. Envelop and embrace the fact that they have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And it goes that way with children, that let me work with you. Let me find out what's at the core. And if I did my job as a parent, you'll know it's there. But don't forget, the evil one doesn't want them to find it as well. Mm-hmm. So he's always going to do things to keep them away as well. So lots of different prayers that we can offer in the sense of how we bring our children back in the time that they're not there, and then support them to help them grow in what they should want and what you have, or in a way that you can help them know more about the faith that they believe in.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to kind of what both of you were saying. I think it's important, like our kids see us praying for something, but they also see our heartache.
Right.
And oftentimes we do that as parents. We're like, we need to pray for this or we need to pray for that. And it's usually something hard.
Yeah, right.
Grandma is sick, or that's me, obviously, and most people, I think over the last year, it's healing. It's either COVID or cancer. I hear it and I hear it and I hear it over and over and over, right? And so we're praying for these catastrophic things, and sometimes there's healing, and sometimes the healing comes in going to be with Jesus. Right. And so our kids, they see that, and they see it as God didn't answer your prayer because you were praying for healing. But I think it is equally powerful, and sometimes more powerful, for us to make sure that we share with our children and we share with others the answered prayers.
The answered prayers, right.
And that we aren't just praying for the hard things that may or may not get answered the way we want, right. So I think seeing those victories, and, I won't go into the whole story, but when my children were young, I used to set them up to pray for things I knew would happen, so they would start to believe that God answers prayer, until the one day my son, saw it raining and he prayed for it to stop instantly so my hair wouldn't get messed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, now I'm going to have to explain why God doesn't answer every prayer because it just started raining.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as we put our hand on the doorknob and stepped outside, it stopped raining. And God answered he must have been 4, this little 4-year-old's prayer. And I remind him of that often. I'm like, do you remember when God stopped the rain when you prayed? And he's like, I didn't do that, Mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
right.
Saying, listen, God answers your prayers. God answers our prayers. And making it kind of a big deal. We forget when it's the good things we're praying for. We do. We forget.
Well, so we have this aspect of what are people asking prayers for? And then what are the results? And before I ask you, Carrie, about, what's our next topic, I'll say this. Recently, someone who doesn't have faith asked me to pray for an outcome for a family member that was struggling with COVID. And when I pray, I have to pray for comfort in God's will. I I wasn't praying for full healing. It looked like it was beyond that.
Well, God's healing.
Right. I mean, God's bringing them into fullness and grace and healing them. And that was what I said was, I'm praying for peace and comfort. And then after the person died, I said, part of my prayer was also so that their life would be fulfilled as they wanted their entire life as a Christian to be with Christ. And the answer to the prayer is that you got to be where you desired to be.
Right.
So answers to prayers can be very difficult. It can lead people away from the church if they don't know how these answers are coming into play. But we as parents, yes, continue to engage, continue to invite. I have a friend that invites his kids to dinner, but part of the deal is that they all go to Mass beforehand. Things like that will help re-engage them and maybe see the church in a new way when you talk about it. So, Carrie, let's just go with a third one. I think that we could do this for 4 days, but let's go with a third one for today.
Well, the word confidence comes to mind because I think people are feeling very beaten down right now. And we talk a lot about depression. We talk a lot about unworthiness. These are things. And, you know, what I saw, I had to make a choice to either dump social media altogether or find a way to engage that was fulfilling, you know. And so I started my Midlife Mamas on a Mission group. And I said, you know, we're a bunch of women in there. Now there's like 175 of us, and we're all midlife women who are on a mission to take back our families, to take back our health and our fitness. And so in that group, it's become a safe place for women to really just share what they're going through. And some of what they share is like heartbreaking to me, because, you know, I just want to go and hug them and love them and like, you know, you are worth so much more than you think you are, or you feel like you are. So for me, that prayer, they come and every Sunday I do prayer and praise from church after I do my ministry. And I drop it at 9:00. I go, put your comments in there so that when we get together live, you can do that. And it's almost always the same types of prayers. It's either for healing, because people that they know are struggling, or it's for them as women to be able to lose their weight, or to get fit, or to find more balance, or to be a better mother or wife to their.
And you see confidence at the root of these prayers?
I really do, because they think they can't do it. I mean, just even going back to what we were last talking about, when people ask us for prayers, you know, people might be tuning in to hear this because they feel like they can't pray because they don't have a relationship. And I always say, you know, you may not know God, you may feel like you don't know God, but God knows you.
Right.
And you don't have to have someone else do the praying. Like, you can do this. God will hear you because he knows you. And so that's what I mean by confidence.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, I have to say too, we had I have social justice now, one of my classes, and we started reading this whole book on social justice, and so there was several different areas they talked about, and so she asked us, what's an area that sort of jumped out to you that you feel you might be called to in either ministry or the social justice aspect, and I said, women that are oppressed. And not just like in third world countries or in, you know, physically abusive. I mean, there are so many women that have an unworthiness. Like you say, like the woman that was bleeding, if I just touch his cloak, I'm not even worthy enough to put myself in his presence. And I just felt like, you know, as a hairdresser, I wrote, I used to do some of the, you know, style shows, and they would have us come and do hair with some of the spring shows, and it would be a fashion show. And this last year I did it, I just felt convicted. I told the gal that I was working with, I said, I'm going off script. And she's like, okay. But I said, you know, I just want to tell every woman out there, as a hairdresser, before I pick up my comb, before I pick up a tint brush, you are beautiful. I mean, women bring life. Literally, we bring life to the world.
Yeah.
And I just want you to understand that you are a beacon of that life to all whose lives you are in. And if you could just know how much you're loved by God and by people you've maybe never even met. I said, you know, I just wish I could give you that. I wish I could just, like, you know, ring it up and put it in a bag and send you home with it. But so many women just struggle with that. And I'm you know, I was a victim of it myself, suffering from low self-esteem, not feeling worthy, always imposter syndrome. And it takes work to really allow yourself, not pridefully, but humbly, to allow yourself to be the precious child of God that he wants you to be.
And that's wonderful and beautiful to hear it from the female aspect, because I get to hear it from a male aspect in Bible study. You think that, you know, men are these leaders, and so they are confident leaders, and they're trying to put on a brave face. Faking it till you make it is not confidence, right? We have to be very honest about our confidence to be who God created us to be, our confidence to forsake the things of the world or to achieve our goals, not for monetary goals, but for accomplishment reasons. And so when I see men, it's this confidence to say, man, you don't have to be like your buddies. If you don't want to go to the bar on a Friday night and drink, tell them you can't go. It's okay to love your wife. You know, it's okay to stay home and love your family. And if your friends can't accept that, be confident in who you are. Or it's okay to be confident to do something nice for your spouse. I'm just speaking in marriage, and not do it perfectly. Be confident to make dinner for your wife. And it's okay if it's the most simple meal or you burn it or whatever. Like you say, I think that all people are so afraid of the if-come, or so afraid of what TV or something tells us is the perfect moment, that they're not confident to let themselves shine. And it is wonderful to tell every woman that you are beautiful and that you don't need to change a thing in order to be lovable. And for men, it's you don't have to have the tough shell or the exterior, that you being you and confident that there's something inside you that you want to share, I think is just as important.
Yeah, I had a really powerful experience in a confession at retreat. And, I was just really at a time of darkness and just feeling unworthy and shamed and sinful from going through divorce. And the priest, I was crying and couldn't even talk. And the priest asked me, he said, "Do you have a daughter?" And I said, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
He said, "Well, how do you feel about her?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, she's the most amazing gift ever." He said, "Why would you think God thinks any less of you?"
Wow.
I mean, this is from a human perspective, and this is God's perspective is, a million times that.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of a game changer for me.
Yeah, and so I think that for those people, that are struggling with confidence, as you point out, that I love that, Millie, that, if you love something or you love someone, magnify that. I remember a friend telling me that one time that we were struggling with an issue with one of our children. And he said, "Do you love your child?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You just have to know that God loves them even more." And it just, man, tears like immediately, poured. So, yeah, time goes by fast. So we have to do this again because we only got through 3. But from a parenting perspective and from that, I'm going to kind of go through and ask you to give a final thought. But, so here's just 3 moments. These are kind of giving you a lead in that, all 3 of these situations that we talk about, you can find fruit in it for whatever it is that you might be dealing with. And as in our last podcast, we talked about the 7 deadly sins that lead to other small sins. Well, the positive thinking and these major issues that we learn to overcome, we can then apply them to all the small things of our life as well. So I'm hoping that this helps some of you through that process. I do want to thank our sponsor before we do our final thoughts, Thrivent Advisors, Brian and Stephanie McCarty. We're so grateful for their support to make this podcast possible. And if you would like to help with donations and supporting the ministry and the work that we do and everything that we offer on faithandreallife.com, you can simply go to the website and click donate. And that will help support this podcast so that we can continue it and bring forth all the other resources that we have to offer. So thank you, Brian and Stephanie McCarty, for sponsoring this episode. So Millie, final thoughts.
Patience and persistence in prayer.
Amen. Carrie?
Confidence and grace.
Grace is a beautiful one. Freely given by God. Something we don't ask for, something that he gives us and only we can deny when we choose to separate ourselves. So have that patience, give yourself confidence, and find every way that you can lead those that you love back to God, because what will happen is when you're leading others to God, your journey will take a magnificent turn and you will grow closer to him in the process. So if you don't want to do it for yourself and you're still doing it for somebody else, trust me, God is watching, and he's probably carrying you most of the time anyway. So we hope that you'll join us on our next edition of the Faith in Real Life podcast. We will definitely do this roundtable again. I love you both. It is good to see you. Thanks for being here. You make this podcast so much better looking than I ever could. So God bless you. God bless you. God keep you. And until we meet again, may God meet you everywhere that you desire him always. Take care.